there, and welcome back to SOS Stories of Survivors. I am so grateful to have our guest today, Mr. Brad Scott. He is such a resilient person. He's got courage, and he's going to tell us about his story that includes unimaginable loss. I'd love for you guys to grab a box of tissues, a cup of tea, and just join us for this amazing conversation. Welcome, Brad.
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing great. I'm so glad that you could be here today.
I'm honored you asked me to do this. I really am.
This is
I'm nervous. I told you.
Don't be nervous. We're amongst friends, and we're gonna just talk about you and talk about your life. I know that you were born without a bladder and you've endured so many surgeries. Can you talk to us about what that was like?
I was born with what's called a bladder extrophy, and basic your bladder's on the outside of your stomach. Well, at the time, two places did surgery. It was Dallas, Texas, or Toronto, Canada. Well, my dad is from Texas, so we went down to Texas, and before the age of 3, I had 3 or 4 reconstructive surgeries, and they did what's called a uterosigmoid ostomy. They took the ureters of my kidney and implanted it into my colon to give me a normal childhood. So basically, I did 1 and 2 at the same time. So,
Wow.
you know, it's a different thing, but it's, I was if not, I would have had a hole, because basically I had a hole in my stomach. So they had to do reconstructive surgery.
To have a
But
normal childhood and have fun and be able to play
yeah,
and do all that. And you were a twin too, right?
my
So
21 minutes older.
21 minutes. Wow. That's a long time.
Yeah, my mother had time to do a crossword puzzle.
So talk to me about your childhood. Did you play sports? What did you do? What was your
I was little. I was scrawny. I played football, but I wasn't good at it. I could throw a football a country mile, but I was short. Uh, Brent, my twin brother, Brent wasn't a sports person. He loved to read, and Brent was a straight A student. I got A's, B's, C's, D's, and F's. I got them all. If I wasn't interested in it, my attention span. But if it was history, I loved history. But I tried to play basketball, but at 5'2", you're not going to make it when you're in the ninth grade. So I gave that dream. But I played golf. Always loved. We'd go on vacation. I loved driving go-karts.
Mhm.
And one time, I have an older brother, Brian, 7 years older. We were racing go-karts. I think Brian was 17, so Brent and I were 10. He's 7 years older than us. We're racing go-karts, and the guy let us drive longer because we were beating and banging and actually moving each other out of the way. We had a ball until I turned Brian's, as little as I was, I turned him sideways, and he hit a wall and broke the wood.
So all right. So how did the challenges that you had with your health shape your childhood? Was it a thing or no?
Well, it's not common. So basically, we hid what was wrong, my health issues. And having what you have, you get being hooked up the way you're. I had a lot of stomach aches, so I was in the bathroom a lot. I would, if somebody hit my stomach, it could cause me to have an accident. And, it got made fun of a few times,
Okay.
but it helped build who I am today, because there's not a lot that really gets on my nerve. You could say things and it just bounces right off me. So I created thick skin. Now, being the way I was, Brent was my protector. If
Mhm.
somebody messed with me, he would just Brent would handle it. I mean, he was the backbone. I was like Michael Corleone. He whoever it was.
I was going to ask you. I was going to ask you, was there a friend or a family member or somebody that looked out for you and
Brent,
took care of you?
yeah,
Oh,
his thing was, uh, I can make fun of him, but you can't. So he but he always protected me. He was, he had an issue being a twin. My dad thinks some of my health problems came from Vietnam Agent Orange, and Brent had a problem with his eye. When he would read, he would put his hand down like this, because he said the books that he would read would go in and out, so he would cover his eyes. And then he had an issue with his fingernails, like they would. It's not, I guess, rot, and he would put cream on it, have to wear gloves on. But other than that, he didn't have any issue. And my older brother Brian, he's 57 years old. He has no. I mean,
no.
he's bored of health.
Wow.
So I had all the health problems. And when I was 12, 1987, I started doing colonoscopies. I'm 50 now, and this year I had my 36th colonoscopy.
Oh my God.
Do it myself. I mean, I've had some. I get to the point to where uh, it was, we found out when I was 12 that my condition, that you can get colon cancer. So we started doing colonoscopies. Well, it got to the point, maybe I was 20, that my doctor here said, "Hey, Brad, we need to start doing them every 6 months." Well, about 21, 22, he says, "Hey, your cells are changing." Well, you know, at 25, I was diagnosed with colon cancer. Well, actually, 24 is when they told me I had colon cancer. So at 25, I had this major operation to where they went in, they took 18 inches of my colon out. They took my about 15 inches intestines, and they made what's called an ileostomy. So I have a stoma on my side, have to catheterize every 3 hours. And my surgery was 9 hours long. I went through 23 IV bottles. The day of surgery, I weighed 179. I left the hospital a week later. I weighed 137 pounds. I lost 42 pounds in 7 days.
Oh my God, that's crazy.
And then I got what's called impact phrenitis, and my kidney shut down and I almost died.
Oh, honey. Oh my gosh. But you recovered from all of that. I mean,
I
you're
look great.
great now.
It's a bunch of stuff.
You're tough stuff. But let's go back. Let's go back in time. You had a great childhood. Your brother was your protector. You grew up in Arkansas, and you had a good life, and you and your brother had a great relationship. Um,
Wonderful family, great parents.
but then
Our house had three:
have
laughter,
oh, go ahead.
love, and respect.
Say that one more time.
Our family, our household had three things: laughter, love, and respect.
I love
I
that.
mean, we my parents were unbelievable. I mean, just they they never raised their voice to us. We got whippings, but they never raised their voice. They treated us so with respect. But my dad's favorite thing is he would say, "Democracy ends at the door and communism begins, and I'm the dictator." He was not rude. He never was mean. My dad was stern, and I love him for it, because I mean, he no meant no.
Yeah.
And my mother, whew, little bitty, but she scared the bejesus out of me.
There's no mistaking her for who's in charge there, right?
Yeah, I mean, she was a teacher, so she was very. Our house was structured. My dad's ex-military, so our house was very, very structured. You did this at this time, and if we got a spanking, it was wait till your dad gets home. My dad was great. He would come home, read his newspaper, eat dinner, talk to us, go outside, water the grass, come in, watch television. 10 minutes for bedtime, grab a belt. We thought he forgot.
Oh man, that is so funny.
But he
But
whipped us. But it was, my everything my dad did was, and parents did it for us, was all out of love. We knew when we walked in our house at 21 Warwick Road, it was a house of love.
oh, I love that. That's beautiful. But there was tragedy that struck at your house. Said you were 15 years old. Do you want to talk
Uh,
about that?
October 22nd, 1990, Monday. My mom was a teacher, so it's a teacher work day, and we're going to hang around. Britt and I, we're at home, and movie Young Guns 2, and I have to say, this was popular. So everybody, Billy the Kid. Well, my dad had bought a gun and got rid of it, took it to his work with him, because he said it's just too dangerous in the house. I don't want it in the house. Well, he ended up bringing it back home, and we grew up around guns. We went and shot them, did all this stuff. But that morning, I decided to play around with the gun. And Brent comes in my room. We're 15 years old. We have our own separate bedrooms. And I taken 6 bullets out of the gun. And he looks at me. He says, "What you done?" And I said, "Well, Dad's at work. I figure I'll play around." And his words were, "You're going to get in trouble one of these days." I said, "Brent, it's unloaded. No, don't worry about it. No big deal." And he walked off. And I remember him saying to me, "I'm going to go here and record a song," because he taught himself how to play guitar. So he loved music. And he goes into his bedroom, and I walked into the hall, and he's about 15 feet away from me, and I pointed a gun at him, and I missed one bullet. I
Oh,
thought I thought I took all 6 bullets out, and he was sitting on his bed, and the gunshot was so loud I didn't hear it, and
oh,
I immediately, it just echoed in my house, and he just rolled off the bed. It was, you
I
know,
know. Oh,
it, it, he passed away instantly. He did not suffer,
no.
but I had to call. 15 years old. We're
Yeah.
you know
What did you know? It's, gosh, what did you do? I mean, do you remember?
he. I won't go into detail because that's to
No.
me that's a private moment
Of
between.
course, of course.
But
You have helped it with this.
I laughed. I actually laughed because we're
Yeah,
fifth. Nothing happens. It's
right,
TV,
right. And that's
and
crazy.
he did not get up. And when I jumped over his bed, what I saw was just very, it's
Oh, gruesome. I know. I know.
15-year-olds shouldn't see it.
No, no 15-year-old should. So, but was there anybody in the house or anybody
I was by
outside? Did
my
anybody, any neighbors here? With
nope,
nothing.
nope. I called the police. I ran, which is weird because there was a phone in his room. I ran out of his room. I called 911. I
Yeah.
called my dad first, and I hung up before he got to the phone. And I called 911, and I got talking to them. Well, I went and checked on Brent and stuff like that. Well, I heard a police siren coming up the street, and one of the things is it was a firefighters. Well, firefighters can't enter the scene until it's secured. So I'm standing in front of them, telling them to help me, screaming at them. And I end up climbing up on the top of the thing and banging on their windshield, going, "Help me, please."
Yeah.
And they jumped out, and one of the firefighters, we became family friends with him. He grabbed me and he said, "Where have you been shot?" And I said, "I'm not the one that shot." And,
Oh,
he told me later that he looked at his his 2 partners. He said, "This is not good." And the police get there, they come in there, and I go to my bedroom because they said, where's the gun? It was laying in the hall, and they asked me, they said, "Where's the bullets?" I said, they asked me if it was loaded. I said, "No, the bullets are on my bed." So I take them in there to show them, and there's 6 bullets, but there's 5. In my mind, I counted 6, and I will always believe that I counted 6.
oh, honey.
I'm sitting there, and I hear this commotion. I look out my window. My mom comes running up the driveway screaming, and I caught her as she came up the stairs, and she tried to get to his bedroom, and I wouldn't let her.
Yeah.
And I fought her all the way to the couch, and I held her down, because she's a mom, and
Yeah.
I saw it, and I don't want her to see it. And I
No.
remember her just sitting there screaming, and they took us into the kitchen, and I had to call my dad and tell him what happened. And
Oh,
I called my dad, and somebody called my older brother Brian, and Brian and my dad I think arrived about the same time, and Brian and my mom and dad went to the hospital, and my grandmother arrived, and she and my neighbor across the street went with me to the police station. And the thing was, one of my mom's fellow teachers showed up at the house, and I was a mess because of.
of course.
And
We don't want you were, I mean, oh my gosh. So, so I'm gonna take you in through this moment. And so all of this stuff is going on. You're a mess. Who was there to help you get through this? I mean,
one of my mom's teacher friends, Sue Offord, she she just passed away last year, and her daughter is the same age I am, and Jackie's the closest thing I ever had to a sister. And Sue ended up cleaning me up and got clothes on me, and I remember she was sitting on the toilet, and I'm 15 years old. I'm only 5'6", maybe 110 pounds, 20 pounds, if that. I'm scrawny.
yeah.
She picks me up and sits me in her lap and just rocks me and tells me, how much she loved me. And
Make me cry, man.
she told me, she said, "Everything's going to be fine." And so they took me down to the police station, and my mom and dad went with Brent, and I'm in a room, and my dad comes in there, and he leans on the wall, and tears go down his face. He said, "Brad, he didn't make it." And I crawled up in my dad's lap, and I mean, I just bawled. He helped me. I think they gave us maybe about an hour in that room by ourselves.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things that I remember. That was one of the longest days of my life, and I remember every detail. I remember coming home that night and taking a shower, and I looked down at my toes, and there was blood on my toes, and I started crying. And my dad came to the bathroom and sat with me, and he kind of helped clean me up. But we had his funeral, and his funeral. This makes you feel great. 700 people came to it. They shut the school down, and you know we were 10th graders, and there was a senior class, the class of 91. They basically, when I came back to school, those people adopted me,
That's
and
so beautiful. I
they,
mean,
they took over. They're like, you're with us. And I mean, they literally were my protectors and my brothers.
I,
And you know my classmates were wonderful. uh I did have a few people that dropped. One person dropped a book behind me. It sounded like a gunshot, and I jumped.
yeah, yeah.
We stayed home. My mom and I stayed home for 3 weeks. But we, growing up, after Brent passed away, I didn't stay at our house. I stayed across the street at the neighbors. When I came home, my mom and dad put a sleeper sofa down, or a hideaway bed, and they wanted me to sleep there. And I would be laying there, and I'd see my mom raise up, just checking on me, checking on me. And then the first time I rode a bicycle and went over, and you're talking maybe 50 yards, if that, around a corner, my mom came looking for me. And she's like, "You stay in front of the house," because she was just fearful.
Of course, of course. Now, what was the stance on guns after that in your house? Did like
I
this?
never shot a gun for a while after that.
Yeah,
It's I am pro gun. The gun, it's not the gun's fault. The gun never walked out of the closet, went upstairs, and said, "I'm going to accidentally discharge." It had to have human involvement to do it. So we met a woman about a month after Brent got killed, and it's weird because her son actually shot his twin brother. His middle name was Thomas. Brent's middle name was Thomas. They were 16. We were 15.
oh my,
Happened on a Mondays or happened on a Monday. Wes fell between the bed and the wall. Brent fell between the bed and the wall. Their mother was a school teacher, and they also had an older brother.
that's crazy.
Yeah, and I went and stayed with him for about a week, Russ, and he that man did. Well, he was 8 years older than I. He did more for me because he kept telling me, "You made a mistake, and you're going to live with this for the rest of your life, but you're also going to have to live."
That's right.
And he helped. And then we lost contact when I was about 18, 19 years, and I always wonder where he is. But Russ, he helped me a lot.
That's because I was going to ask you, because the weight of just carrying both the grief and the survivor's guilt, is a lot for anyone, and especially a young person like you were.
Well, I hid a lot of my sadness because I saw my parents, and they were just crying, and I didn't want to be a burden, but they were so worried about me
Yeah.
that we went to Florida that summer, and our neighbors went with us, and we went out to eat. And as we're eating dinner, our first night dinner, and we're emotional, they play a song on the radio that we played at Brent's funeral, and my dad went over there and told them what happened. They turned it off, and we went back to the condo, and I'm watching my mom cry, my dad hold her, and thank goodness our neighbors went with us, because my dad would have packed the car up and drove 9 hours back.
Oh my God. Oh,
But I tell you one of the most things my dad did, and what a remarkable man he is. That Christmas, I don't know how my mom did shopping. Brent was killed in October. Uh, my dad had my brother come over to the house, and he said, we went to a thing called Compassionate Friends for parents who've lost children. He said, your mother's holding a candle for Brent, and I got my arm around her across us as a couple holding. He's holding a candle, she's holding a candle. Together, they're holding a candle. They lost all three of their children in a house fire. They don't have a family anymore. And my dad was literally like, y'all don't complain about this. We still have you too. And he was right. I mean, I I never did drugs in high school. I drank alcohol, but I never did drugs because I never wanted to be a statistic of somebody go, yeah, well, look at him. He's all doped up. And yeah, he
yeah.
actually shot and killed his brother. So figures. I I felt like there was enough pressure on me as is.
Wow, my God, I just got to tell you, Brad, you are so remarkable. I mean, my heart swells just talking to you because I mean, I know what your parents have gone through, and I have two other children, and I know, you know, that feeling, and I know where we're going with these conversations. So I'm just, you blow me away, my friend.
Well,
You are just a light, and it's just beautiful,
you
really.
just I appreciate, and I get embarrassed. I really do because you know I don't. I don't feel like a role model. Some people tell me, say, Brad, you're an inspiration. It's like, no, refuse to give up. Uh, I don't want somebody to label me because I felt like with my health problems, losing my brother the way he did, I feel like there's things strikes against me. And so I will tell you this: I for the longest have had this attitude of I don't want to be wrong, and it was because I was wrong one time. And as I get older, sometimes being wrong is a great thing.
It is a good thing. It's how you learn. I mean, it really is. I mean, it's just, I know it's a journey, and the journey through grief and healing, you know, it takes a lot, but you fall onto people. And now I know you fell in love and you got married. And
And
when did that happen, you know?
December of '96 at a restaurant. I love dark headed women. I'm kind of like Elvis. I love a dark headed woman. And back of her head, I was like, her hair looks cute. Well, as we walked out, I looked at her. Well, we drove off and we passed each other, and I kind of stuck my head. Well, she came to chew me out. And what my problem was, I said, I just thought she had been out for like days, so she had makeup on for day for not fresh. But I told her, I said, I just thought you were cute. That's all. Well, we ended up dating, and we dated for God, started dating in December '96, got married in August of '98. Well, because of my health problems, I was always told that having kids would be hard. So all of a sudden, April of '99, we end up getting pregnant. We can't afford anything. I mean, we can't afford to pay attention. So we end up having,
I love
okay,
that.
and I'm sitting there going, oh Lord. Well, kind of find out we're having a boy. And he gets born. It was a cold night, but they waited the next morning. He was born December 2nd, 1999. And my middle name's Elliot, and Britt's middle name is Thomas. Well, Kristen decided that his name is Bradford Elliot Thomas Scott. He was born, his initials are Betts, and he actually 7 pounds and 11 ounces. So we're sitting there going, holy crap, please don't be a gambler. But, when he was born, because when I have a niece that's was born in '92, and so you always think, is this person going to take Brent's spot? And my niece did not take Brent's spot. She became her own person. And when Bradford was born, I remember I cried because this is responsibility. And I said, Lord, just please don't let anything happen to him. I just don't know what I'll do. And my dad made a comment. He kind of got upset with me later. He said, did you think you could ever love something so small? I said, Dad, I don't love him. I don't know him. Now, it took about 2 days to get to know him, to fall in love. And I mean, at nighttime, I'd tell Chris, let's put him on a shelf, which meant put him to bed. But, you know, found out 1 month later that he was born that I had cancer. So that was between January and of 2000 and April 2000, we made 6 trips. We'd drive down to Dallas, talk to doctors. So they did my surgery. But what was sad was Bradford, I got to hold him April 17th. I didn't get to actually pick him up and hold him till August because I could not pick him up because of my stomach. And Kristen was taking care of a newborn and me. I don't know how she did it. I mean, I think back, I just do not know how she took care, but she did. But the funny thing about Bradford was he would go, my grandparents would keep him. And I had grandparents up into my 40s. And my grandfather was ex-Navy, so he would cuss. And he would cuss around Bradford. Well, Bradford, all he knew was Dad's sick. He's always in the hospital. I'm in the hospital one day, and a doctor touched me, and Bradford proceeded at 3 years old to tell that doctor to get his blanket hands off of me. He looked at my mom, goes, just put her head down, and Chris and I were like, look at Bradford, and he just went off. And finally, my mom goes, my dad my mother and father take care of him, and it's like my dad's ex-Navy's, blah blah blah. But he all Bradford knew was dad's sick,
Oh
and
my
he
gosh.
would help me get, my kitties attacked me. He would help me get in bed. He would bring me stuff, and he was such an easy kid. He did not cry much. We didn't have to hardly discipline. You could talk to us at Bradford, you're disappointed in me. Don't do that. Yes sir. You know, but
Oh,
we didn't know he had dyslexia when he started school. So he was behind on reading and he struggled. But the cutest thing happened one day. We had a parent teacher conference, and the teacher goes, Bradford is not doing anything in class. And we're like, sorry, but he is so polite. He handed in a test that had no answers on it except his name. And I said, Bradford, you didn't answer it. Ma'am, it was too hard. Well, I put my name on it so you know it was mine. He was like, that just got me because he was so polite. But his reading was behind, and we got a tutor, and he brought his reading up. By the time he graduated, he was fine, didn't have an issue. But he hated school.
yeah.
But if there was something like me, if there was something he was interested in, he was video games. He could buy a video game, and he'd get home an hour later, take me back to the store. But I already beat this one.
Well, isn't it funny because they have these struggles, but yet they're so clever and they're so smart that they can figure out ways around it, you
Oh
know?
yeah, I mean he could figure things out on video games, and it's like, how the heck do you do that? And I'd sit there, and we were playing a racing game one time, and I couldn't even make it past something. The next thing you know, he gets zooming by, and I'm like, how do you do that? Well, it's like, I understand what they're doing, because it's like, what have you studied? This person, but he did not go. I was always a yard. I went outside. My dad did stuff. He wouldn't do anything like that. He wouldn't not do that. He got on a mower one time, and I teared up because I'm like, my boy's on a mower. But that was it. He just did not like to do stuff. But as he got older, I tell you, one of the coolest things we ever did. Uh, it was August of 2015. I told him, he knew who Brent was, but he didn't know what happened with Brent. We kind of hid that from him.
Okay.
And then when he was about in sixth grade, we told him what happened. Well, he was 15, and I walked into his room today. I said, "You're exactly the same age I was when Brent died." So my days, and seeing that kind of visually hit me, because you we know we're older, but inside we still feel younger.
Yeah.
So visually seeing him, I'm thinking, man, that's a child going through that.
Yeah.
And I said, my days of telling you what to do are over. You should know how to act. And very, I had to correct him and everything. But him and I did one of the coolest things we did. I came in one night. I said, hey, what are you doing tomorrow? And he goes, nothing. I said, I want you to go to work with me. So we got up, and this was 2015, right before school started. I thought, I'm going to spend the day with him. So instead of going left to go to work, we went right. He goes, where are we going? I said, we're just going somewhere. So we're driving for about an hour. He goes, where are we going? And I said, don't worry about it. So finally, he sees the Louisiana border. He goes, what are we doing? I said, we're going to go down to Duck Commander for the day. He loved Duck Dynasty. So
Oh, how fun.
we met Godwin, took pictures with him. I told him I owned a business, and this was one of my few days off. And he was actually, you took a day off, so we took pictures with. We actually went to their house and acted like we lost and drove down their private driveway, because I told Bradford, what's the worst thing that happened? They'll just call the police and we'll just leave. But
Yeah.
we did that. Now, here's the funny part about it was, we went down there, stayed, saw their church, their houses, ate at Willie's Duck Diner, bought stuff from the gift shop, drove back home. Got back home. His mother had no idea that we even. And we finally told her down the road. She's like, what? And I was like, yeah. Bradford's like, yeah, we went to Duck Commander. He's like, no, you did. So we showed pictures of us and golf. You mean to tell me you left the state and you didn't tell me? Yeah. Well, it's like, we drove 200 miles, had fun, got back. But we walked in the front door, and she got home 20 minutes later. What'd y'all do today? Oh, we busy day working. And that was just our bonding time. But, Chris and I kind of drifted off. And in 2018, at Bradford graduated, and we got a divorce, and that was on me. I didn't like how our marriage was going, and I'm the one that wanted out. And because of her, we built a great relationship outside of our marriage and became friends. And we would actually talk, and we would probably text every day, very seldomly on the phone, but every now and then we would talk about. And I'd go by and see her. She'd come out the house to see me, and she is what built our relationship.
Mhm.
And her and Bradford ended up getting an apartment beside each other. So he moved out, but one of the things he did that I was so proud of was he wanted in 2020 a Toyota Tacoma. And when your kids go, I got money, you always think $300 is not money, you know. So I tell my boss, if you buy this, you got to put money down. He said, I got money. And I'm thinking, okay, well, he's driving for Domino's. This is during the whole Corona. So I said, where's your money? We go in there and he's got $20 bills. We counted out, he has saved up in 3 months on tips $6,000.
Wow, I am proud of him. That's
So
amazing.
I'm sitting there going, holy. So my parents are going to co-sign his loan because at the time I owned a business, and because of Corona, I had to shut it down, and you had to do the bankruptcy and all that other stuff. And so they were like impressed. We're going to put money down. So he got this 2020 Tacoma, absolutely loved it. That was his automobile. And so he moved out not long after that on his own. And we had a dog come to our house in 2018. He said, Lucy's my dog. I'm going to take Lucy with me. So him and Lucy moved out. And when he moved out, he was 21 years old, which I didn't get married and moved out till I was 23. So he did everything before I did. So
Yeah,
I was proud of it. Now he cared about it. He checked his credit every week. Oh, my credit's going up. Oh, it's gone. I mean, he was building his credit.
that's so good. That's so smart.
Oh, I mean, I was, you could, like my mother and my mom and dad, they adored him. And it's like he would come over and they would tell him I could tell him something. Yeah, yeah, yeah. They could tell him the same thing. And he'd go do it. So I mean, he was a good kid. And you never had he did not make you as a parent go, what's he doing now? We never had that with him.
So he, great kid. Was he working? Did he have a job?
He quit Domino's because he was working from 4 to 4, 6 days a week, and he was extremely worn out.
Yeah.
So the woman that he worked for left Domino's, and she went to Amazon, and she called him. So she said, come up here. And he went up there and he got a job without filling out an application. This one woman goes, she says you're pretty good. And Bradford goes, yeah. She goes, all right, see you tomorrow. And he goes, like, so I got a job. He loved Amazon. He
Oh,
he would come on his days off and help load trucks. He started training people. But the hours of Amazon, I'm one of these people. I get up every morning at 4 a.m. So I would go to bed at 8. Well, he wouldn't go until about 9 to pick up Lucy. He would drop Lucy, his dog, off at the house. So I would stay up because as a parent, it worries you that your child's out. But he worked his tail off. He loved it. He was actually going to try for a management position.
wow. So what happened? What was how was his mental state? I mean, was he okay? What was going on with him?
Oh,
Did he friend?
Bradford, when we told him about Brent, he was very concerned about me. But Bradford was almost like an adult with me. He was so worried about my health. And anytime I was sick, he would panic. And I had a kidney infection in 2023 that he had to take me to the hospital. And he ended up going the wrong way. And we got into a heated argument. And my mom's the one who had to tell me, it's like, Brad, he's scared. It's like every time you get sick, it is because my grandfather died at 57 of a heart attack. My dad was only 32. And
Mm,
my mom's like, Brad, it's scaring him because he's thinking he's going to lose you.
yeah, yeah.
And, I always thought my dad would pass away at 57 because my grandfather died at 57 and my dad had triple bypass at 57. So and then my dad had triple bypass again at 73. So,
Wow.
and he's 78 now.
God bless him, man. That's awesome.
He's a tough old dude.
That's great. So tell me, so what happened with your son, hon?
May 26th, Friday, fence. I'm living here at our house and our fence is falling down. So I asked him to come help me work on the fence. And as we're working on the fence, I'm using an auger and I'm about 245. I'm a stocky guy and it's jerking the crap out of me. And Bradford wants to use it. I said, Brad, if you break an arm, you can't work. And he's like, yeah. And when I stepped on a nail, he thought it was funny because anytime if I got hurt, I made these weird sounds and he just thought it was funny. So he said, I said, so if my shoes fill up with blood, are you really going to laugh? Well, he took my sock off and it was red. So So he leaves about 4:35, and as he leaves, he says, "I'll be back in the morning." I said, "All right." I said, "I'll be here." So he leaves, and about 8 something, I realize I don't have my debit card. He's got my debit card. So I text him, and Bradford's a quick texter. He didn't respond.
Hmm.
So Chris and I, like I said, we would text all the time, but we wouldn't talk on the phone because I'm just not a phone talker. So I called her and I said, "Hey, you talked to Bradford?" And she's like, "Yeah, earlier." And I said, "Well, he's got my debit card." And I texted, he's not responding. She said, "Well, he's out where he was at was kind of rural." And she said, "He probably can't get phone service." She goes, "I've got to work tonight. So what I'll do is I'll talk to him, give me time to text you." I said, "No, have him call me." So I went to bed about 10. So, and I'm a light sleeper. Ever since Brent passed away, I can sleep 3, 4 hours a night and I'm good. And I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden I hear a bang, 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 and my two bangs, and my doorbell rings. So I'm like, "What is that?" Because if it's family, they're going to call. So
Right.
I look out my peephole, and there's 4 people standing on my front porch. And you've seen the TikTok videos where somebody makes you think it's an emergency, and you open the door and they rush you.
Right. Right. Right.
I'm not open the door at 4 a.m. So I go and look out of a window, and I see a police car in my driveway and a police car in the street.
Got chills.
And I ran to my door. I opened the door and I said, "Is my son okay?" That was my first words out of my mouth. And they said, "Sir, you need to sit down." And I said, "Is my son okay?"
Mm.
And they introduced themselves. They were very, very polite. And they said, "I regret to inform you, but your son was killed in an accidental shooting." I said, "No, no, 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 no. My brother was killed in an accidental shooting.
Yeah.
Not my son."
Right.
And they said, "Is your son Bradford Elliott Thomas Scott, white Tacoma, black hair, beard, about 6 foot tall?" I said, "Yeah." They said, "Sir, he's dead." And I fell to my couch. And I mean, I'm just like, "Oh my God. Oh my God." So they asked me where his mother was. And I said, "We're divorced." And they said, "Sir, we need to tell her." I said, "You don't tell her anything. That's my job."
Mm-hmm.
So they asked me, "Do you need a police escort?" And I said, "No, no, I got this." And I left my house and I called my dad, my mom and dad, and I was
Oh,
probably in a panic. And I told my dad, "Bradford's dead, Bradford's dead." And twice I've had to call my dad and tell him somebody he loved was killed. And I went to Kristen's work and she wasn't there. And I went to her apartment and I banged on the door and she didn't answer. And I called her and she goes, "What?" I said, "Open up, open up." And she went, "Oh my God," and screamed. And she opened the door. I said, "Bradford's dead." And she just, I mean, started just, no, she didn't comprehend it. And
no.
we fell to the ground. I was holding her and crying. And she said, "You take me to him now." I said, "I don't know where to take you." She said, "You take me to whoever told him." Well, this is about 40 miles away. And I mean, I got there in about 25, 30. I went down and off the road because I got to find out what happened to my son.
Right.
And we get to the police station, and Kristen shock has set in majorly with her, and the police are talking to us, and Kristen thinks this is a joke. And finally, I had to tell her, I said, "Kristen, it's 6 o'clock on a Saturday morning. We're in a 4x4 room. I've never seen these people before in my life. Get in here. We got to find out what happened to our son."
Yeah.
So she comes in there, and she still didn't believe him. And
No. See, it's shock. You don't want to believe it.
yeah, don't want to
No,
believe,
it's got to be a mistake. It can't be.
and
Everything in you says no, right?
yeah, and they tell us, they said, you know, uh, because of Brent's death, you got experience on this, and they said, he actually shot himself, and I said, "I don't believe it."
No.
And I said, "Who was at the house?" They told us. I said, "You need to test these kids for gunshot residue." They didn't test anybody for gunshot residue. They said their stories match up. And I said, "What happens to these 3 12-year-old kids?" So finally, I told Chris, and they were just doing their job. And again, I still have a lot of doubts. Kristen has tremendous doubts. She does not think Bradford died in an accident, and she has every right to feel that way. But we left. I didn't know where to go.
So they're saying that they called it a suicide, but they said it was an accidental death.
The
Cleaning the gun and it
no, no, I don't want to go in detail about what happened.
fine.
I'm very protective of his mother.
Okay.
And
That's
it's, I met with the kids and I talked to them.
yeah.
And, when I talked to them, I'll be honest with you, I tried to bluff them. And, they did not look at each other like, holy crap, or anything. They just looked at me and said, that is not what happened. And, they walked me through what happened. Well, I did a freedom of information on his case file. And when I'm sitting there reading it, I remember Kristen looking at me. She says, after the fourth time I broke down, she said, Brad, please stop.
Yeah.
And I said, why? And she goes, just the look on your face. I don't know what you're reading. And I said, don't ever read this.
No.
And she said, why? I said, it just talks about, how his hand was, what the police officer said. I said, it's very detailed. You don't need to read this.
No, you
Well,
don't.
that was weeks later, but go back to the day he died, where do you go? So Kristen said, she said, take me to your mom. I need her. And so we get there, and my brother and his wife had already shown up at my mom and dad's house. My mom runs by and just pushes my dad, and she grabs Kristen and grabs her. And now, again, we've been divorced for 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad walks up. He says, son, I got no words. And, we walk inside, and she's in no condition to call her family. And I hadn't talked to her family in 5 years. I called her dad and her brother to tell them what happened.
Oh.
And, Bradford is my child. He is our child. It's not her responsibility. Anybody else. I'm his dad. I'm supposed to call these people. And her family came over, and it was like time just paused. I mean, just absolutely wonderful. Very concerned about her. And, Aurora called and wanted to donate his eyes. And Kristen was to the point, she's like, he's going to need his eyes. She still did not, believe that he was gone. So we're sitting there. This was a Friday. We're sitting there on a Sunday. My dad said, Kristen, have you thought about where you're going to bury him? Yeah. And Kristen goes, I'd like to. Oh. She said, I'd like to bury him with Brent. And she said, but I'm not family, and I want to be beside my son. And my dad goes, do you want to be with your child? And Kristen goes, yeah, my dad said, you have a spot. That's no questions asked. You're going to be with him. Oh. So when Brent got killed, we didn't know where we were going to bury Brent. And my grandfather bought these graves in the 50s, and come to find out there were 4 graves right in front of them. Mm-hmm. So my parents bought all the graves. Well, Brent has we have this big old family marker that has 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 plots. Well, I designed it. I was 15, sitting, drawing out on a piece of paper because we could not decide a marker. And the thing about my mom and dad, even though I'm 15, Brian was married. He was out of the house. But when we decide on something, it was what all 3 of us decided. So, my mom and dad made sure that I was in it. But I'm drawing this thing, and my dad looks down and says, what are you doing? I said, I'm designing a marker. And he looked down, and he asked me, he goes, can you design this? She said, I don't know. My dad said, this is what we want. My mom goes, that's what we want. It's been 34 years. They still have the drawing. Because, this is 12 inches. So Brent is buried here, and Bradford's buried right in front of him. Oh. And we went out to the cemetery, and Kristen said, I'd like for him to have his own marker. And my dad goes, sure. And my dad said, Bradford's the only one who gets his marker. So when my mom and dad, well, my dad set up the funeral, but my dad asked me, he said, does Bradford have life insurance? And I said, yeah. And he says, I want you to take that money and do something with it. He said, your mother and I are going to pay for his funeral. And, funeral's $30,000.
I know.
And they paid for his funeral. And come to find out, my brother paid half of it because he said, I don't have a niece or nephew anymore on this side. He said, my last act as an uncle is I want to make sure my nephew has a good funeral. And paid for it. But the whole week of Bradford's death, my brother never left my side. When I think about Brian, I get upset because he's 7 years old. And I think sometimes with Brent dying and stuff, he was left out. But Brian, he is the strength of our family. My mom's the rock. Brian is the strength because when we have anything financial, personal, whatever, we go to him. And Brian is straightforward.
Oh my God.
But he went.
The love, it just shines through.
Brian and I were not close till I was 19. He got divorced. And I went out with him because my dad made me go out with him. And he had I didn't. But my dad set the foundation of our closest. And the thing is, with each tragedy, we get closer. And Brian is his wife, Lori. Uh, the week of Bradford's funeral, she whatever Chris and I needed, she did it. And Kristen was would been in a family the longest, 20 something years when we got divorced. But Lori's been in our family for 10 years, and she's the fit. She's the perfect fit. And with Bradford's death, my mom and dad, Brian and Lori and Chris, have all got closer.
And you and Krista got back together, right?
So we stayed at my mom and dad's house, and that week we were sitting on the bed, and she goes, "Brad, thank you for being so calm." And I said, "Why?" She said, "Because if you weren't, I would go insane right now." So Brad, that following Friday, I wanted to go home. I'd been at my parents because we did not need to be alone.
Yeah.
And even though we're 48 years old, we're still kids.
Yeah.
Because I don't see how my parents were 43 and 44 when Brent died, I think. So they were 43 or 44. So they were younger than us. And my dad is sitting there crying in a chair. He said, "Brad, please don't go. Stay with me." And I said, "Dad, I want to go home." And he looked at me. He said, "Are you going to hurt yourself?" And I asked my mom, I said, "Sit down." And they both sat down. I said, "Our whole family has always been make me a promise or promise me." And I said, "I'm going to make you a promise. I won't do anything to myself while you are alive. But if my heart is still hurting as bad as it is when you're gone, I have no problem." Now, the thing with tragedy, like yourself, that pain doesn't go away, but it does subside. It does subside.
So what
And
does healing look like? What does healing look like for you, Brad?
healing for me is I didn't want to be around people. Uh, went out. I hung out with a bunch of friends of mine, and I went out one night, and they could tell I was uncomfortable. And Chris and I were right there, and they said, "What's going on?" I said, "I'm very uncomfortable." I said, "I want to go home." And and a friend of mine, his wife goes, "Why?" And I said, "Well, because if I laugh, I don't want y'all thinking, wow, he's over that death. Or if, I bring up Bradford, that's not fair of me." And they go, "Brad, we just want to see you smile." So, but Chris and I, we left my parents' house, and she's like, "Brad, don't make me go back to that apartment." I said, "No, you're coming with me. You're gonna come home with me. I'm gonna take care of you." And she came home. I remember her saying, she goes, "How's this gonna work?" I said, "What's worse than this? Nothing." And when at the end of our marriage, I got to the point to where I drove quickly to go to work and I drove slow to come home. But now I go to work slow and I come home quickly. Everything I do, I want to do it with her. Uh, I text her, "Hey, I'm gonna go out front and do yard work." I never did that before, and it's like, you know,
That's
she,
beautiful.
she's my partner.
Yeah.
She doesn't deserve this.
No.
She uh, she didn't understand how painful it was.
Yeah.
She said, "Brad, when you talked about Brent, I didn't get it until now." But the thing that's remarkable is the marker that we have. My mother has decorated it for 33 years, and last year she said, "I can't do it anymore. It's too painful." And I Brent's death date this year's 35 years, and every death date I always text, "How you doing?" "Good, good." Last year I texted my mom, "How you doing?" "Not good." That's not my mom. So I left work and I went over there and I said, "What's going on?" And her and my dad were sitting there and they said, "We don't want to talk about this because you've got enough on your plate." And I said, "It's okay." I said, "I can handle this. You know that." And my mom goes, "Brent's not out there by himself anymore." And I said, "Well, Mom, he wasn't out there last year." She said, "Yeah, but I didn't have time to think about it last year. And this year I've had time to think about it and I don't like it." So they decided, "You need to build a storage building and get the flowers out of our house. We don't want to do it anymore. It's too painful for us." And Kristen now decorates the grave, has completely taken it over, like 100%. It's hers. And my mom called when Kristen decorates. She takes pictures and sends it to my mom. The biggest compliment my mom did. My mom called her and said, "I love you. I'm so happy you're doing this. You did better than I am. It makes my heart happy that when I'm gone, somebody's going to carry this on."
I
And
love.
by
Oh
turn,
my gosh.
my mother is very structured, and I mean, it's not her, but she is. She can handle anything. The week of Bradford's death, she was the foundation. how she didn't break down, because I think she looked at my dad's health, because my dad popped, he popped 12 nitroglycerins for his heart that day. And I didn't think my dad would, I didn't think he'd make it
Oh,
because of the death of my son. But it's going on 3 years, and my dad's still here. But my parents, when I get down and depressed, and I got to wipe my eyes because I know I'm going to start crying. When
oh,
I get, grief, when you lose a child, you're not afraid to, embarrassed to cry anymore.
no,
Because,
exactly. It's okay. You can
but,
cry. Like,
but
what?
my mom and dad, when I get down, I think about my parents losing a child,
Yeah.
now losing a grandchild, and now watching a child go through losing a child. And I can't imagine the pain with them, because, they don't ever complain or anything like that. But my dad, he's so worried about my health that
They
this,
would worry about you, of course.
yeah,
What do you, I mean, what message would you give to someone who's going through such grief and loss, or other parents, or
here,
that,
I call this the freshness of the death is worn off. Down the road, when you really need people, when everything's settled, you've buried your child, you've done this with their stuff, you need people. And we have a support group that we went to, and we went 6 months after Bradford passed. Now, if we'd have done it 2 months after he passed, I don't think we'd have made it, because all the people that come in there and they share their stories, sometimes it's too much. And we had a couple that came in like 2 weeks after losing their child, and their strength. But the most amazing thing that helped us was Kristen has a nephew who's the same age as Bradford. He is getting married in 2024. We have not celebrated 1 year of Bradford gone. Chris and I cannot do the wedding. We can't do it. And that weekend, our support group has a retreat that opened up. I don't know how it opened up, but they called us, and we went to the retreat. And there were some people. It's here in Arkansas, but it's also worldwide. And there were some people there we met. And when you share I hate saying my story,
but it is.
but I always say Brent and Bradford's. I'm just a part of it.
Well,
And
that's true. It is.
and it is your story. Like I said, I get embarrassed, but when you hear other families share their grief,
Yeah.
and I've said this before about people who've lost children, I consider you family, and I'll say other families.
Yeah.
Speak a language that, unless you have a child loss, you don't understand it. And people can talk about how they feel, and you get them and they don't have to explain anything, but you do realize you don't move on, you just move forward.
That's right. That's
And
right.
moving forward, sometimes, we have to pretend Bradford's on vacation. And I have to pretend there's times I let my guard down and I lose it. And Kristen asked me about 6 months after he passed. She was vacuuming. She stopped the vacuum cleaner, and she looked at me. She goes, "I just want to know if you're over this." And I was like, "What?" And she goes, "I want to know if you're over this." And I said, "Why?" She goes, "You're not crying anymore." And I said, "Well, the week of his funeral, you told me thank you for being calm." And I said, "Were you about to lose it?" She goes, "I lost it." I said, "Okay, but if you see me lose it, and you said I'm your safety net, how are you going to feel?" I
Yeah.
said, Chris, I lose it, but I don't do it around you. But we're weird. We
You're
we
not weird. You
no
are so normal. Oh my
no.
God.
Weird is we will be here at the house. It'll be midnight, and Brent and Bradford are buried 2 minutes from our house, and we'll sit there at midnight. It's like, you want to go see your let's go see Bradford. So we'll go there at midnight, sit at the cemetery with him. But here's the thing, that when he was killed, uh, Brian and I went to the police station, and Brian had his dog Lucy, because my fence was torn down. Never had a chance. I had a Bible study group that I'd only been in for less than a year. They came
You
over.
were working on fixing that, right? When you got the nail in the foot.
They fixed my fence, so I couldn't have my.
Oh,
So my brother kept my dogs. And when Brian and I went to the police station, and one of the police officers said, "Who has his dog, Bradford's dog?" And Brian goes, "I do." And they go, "We got 3 people that would like to adopt her." And I was like, "Well, no, she's coming with me." I said, "Why do you want to adopt her?" They said, "Sir, we don't want to share with you." I said, "Share it." And they go, "When your son was laying on the ground, his dog refused to leave his side. We dragged her into her room, and Lucy came back out and actually laid across his body, refused to leave. So she was loyal to the end." and we have her on his marker, and we have Lucy to this day. She she
Good, good.
she sleeps with us every night. Bradford had a beard, so she licks my beard at night. Uh, she I hold her, and funny thing is, she wants to go to the cemetery, and she will actually go to the door. I said, "You gonna go see your boy?" Yeah. And this is the part that I love the most because Brent had a sense of humor. She goes to Brent's grave, she squats down and pees on him. Then she goes to Bradford's grave and lays on him. So, and she does that routine, but she has something at the cemetery, and dogs see things we don't see. One day, all of a sudden, her ears perked up and her tail started going 90 to nothing, and she started walking off. So we don't know if she saw Bradford, but
Oh, I'm sure she did.
last I'm a clean freak with vehicles, and one of Bradford's last acts, and this makes me laugh because he knew I hated dog hair, was I took his truck. He owed money on his truck, and his mother and I paid it off. And people asked us, "Why did you pay it off?" I said, "That was his. I
Yeah.
don't want some kid getting it and destroying it. It could sit in the driveway and rust, but that's his." So we took the seats out. He had about an inch of dog hair. And the vacuum cleaner, I looked up. I said, "You're killing me, boy. You're killing me." And I spent all day out there, and the whole time I'm not crying. I'm actually laughing because I could probably think of him going, "Dad, you're not very happy right now." Yeah.
Oh, I love that. I love that story. Is there like a phrase, a song, or a moment in nature that's brought you comfort during your hardest days?
I couldn't listen to music on my phone. We all say music now, but I
Yeah.
could listen to music that I'd saved because to me that was before Bradford. Now
Oh,
it could come on the radio. He loved Phil Collins. He thought Phil Collins was the best. And Against All Odds comes on, and I will turn my stereo up till I blow my speakers. And it's like every time I hear that song, take a look at me now. I'm just standing here. There's things that song I hear that I didn't hear before.
yeah.
But I go every morning. Like I said, I get up at 4 a.m. even on the weekends. But every morning, Monday through Friday, I always go to the cemetery to check his grave. And people go, "He's not there." You're right, his spirit's not there. But I watched, when Brent got killed, my dad stood beside Brent's coffin, and he said, "Goodbye, son. I love you. I'll see you again someday." And his knees buckled. I didn't know those words would haunt 33 years later. You know, uh, I closed Bradford's coffin, and I kissed him on his forehead, and I said, "Goodbye, son. I love you. I'll see you again soon." So it's almost like I've done everything my dad did. But the thing is, I'll never have grandkids. Uh, but I will say this: my niece is fixing to have her first child, and it's hitting me hard. But I'm so happy for her. But 5 months after Bradford got killed, my niece was in a car wreck, and it was a bad car wreck. And my mom called me and said, "Savannah's been in a very, very bad wreck." And I mean, I have to put this zone on, so I can get the information. I call my brother, and he says guy hit her about 70 miles an hour, totaled her car. Got bruises on, but she's okay. I hung up the phone. I lost it because I thought if something happens to her, it's like, I can't do it. But Brad did something uh, that I love. Brent was holding a guitar when he was killed. He loved music. And we have all of Brent's stuff in crates. Like we were in the news for a week, and we have pictures of him in his coffin. Well, when Bradford was 15, he wanted to see that stuff, and when we put out the pictures, Bradford looked just like Brent, and I had to put the pictures up. I'm like, I can't look at that's Bradford in a coffin. And Brian called me one day, and he said, "Hey, I want to take Brent's guitar and put it in a box and hang it on my wall in a glass case." And I went, "Okay." He said, "Well, all of Brent's stuff is your stuff." He said, "Mom, Dad," said, "I got to ask you." I said, "Well, Brian, he's your brother too."
Yeah.
Well, and I said, "You do what you want to." Well, when I saw it, I got mad inside. I didn't show Brian.
No.
But then I thought later, I was like, that's Brent's guitar. Brent, I'm a twin. That's my property. But later I went, no, Brian asked.
He did.
Did it the right way, and the way he did hung the guitar on his wall is so beautiful. And Lori, his wife, she has a picture of Brent on a wall with angels around it. I mean, Lori always makes sure every year on our Facebook that our family knows today's about Brent.
I love that.
He never met Brent, but she always makes sure. But you
She
know,
honors him just the same. I mean, if you could go back to your younger self and give your younger self one piece of advice, what would that be?
I'm afraid if I did, I'd change my strength.
Yeah.
If I said something to myself, would it alter what happened? When Brent got killed, I learned quickly that less than a second, something can happen that could change your life. So his death changed how I was. I'd ride a bicycle, ride it right through traffic.
Right, right.
I didn't. The only piece of advice I would give myself really is just love everybody.
Yeah.
As I get older, I have no problem telling people, my friends, love you.
And that's what it's all about, man. I got to tell you, um, one word that captures how you want to live today. Could you tell me? I know what that word is for me portraying on you. What do you think that one word is that encompasses you?
Help. I want to spend. I'm not going to have grandkids. I'm going to grow old. Uh, what's the odds of you know may end up with Alzheimer's? I always say, put me in a home and forget about me. But while I'm here, I want to help other families. You know, when we have our meetings, we have new people come in, and after it's over, I try to always go and talk to them. And I'll share this. I don't know how much time we have left. We had a POA meeting, and I went to it and told the lady of the POA. She said, I need help. I said, well, I'll hand out notices. I said, I look mean, like anybody's going to say something. And I said, we built a storage building. We're fixing to build a patio. Bradford and Brent are 2 miles away. And I never talk about Brent. I just say he passed away. Well, I shared this story with them. And the next day, their 27-year-old twin committed suicide.
Oh, funny.
And you talk about hitting you hard. I went to the funeral and gave the dad a hug, and I saw my face in him. That's the only funeral I couldn't make it,
Yes,
and
yeah.
couldn't do it. And the amazing thing was, I went to Lowe's afterward. You're dressed nice for funeral, and I'm just crying. And this woman looks at me. She says, "Are you okay?" I said, "No."
No.
And I
It's
said,
okay
"I just,
not to be okay. You know that, right?
you know." And she said, "That's hard." And I said, "Yeah." And that woman just grabbed me by the hand. She said, "You're gonna make it." And just a stranger, but I tell you what
Yeah.
you find now, and you experience this yourself. You find now you see more children's death, and they hit you. Before, when I thought my family had had all the tragedy was going to happen when my brother died, and now uh, our support group, 11 families, 6 of us lost our only child,
Yeah.
and you see, that's what one of the parents newbie said. I see deaths now with children. I never saw that before. Why am I seeing that? It's like, because you've lost your child. It sticks. But
But
with
yeah,
child loss, the stigmatism that I have, and I'm trying to get over it, is I feel like there's a neon light flashing. Child loss, child loss, child loss, and I tried not to talk about, but I have no problem talking about, uh, Bradford. I don't like to talk about his death because it's just
and you should, and you don't have to because, and
I don't have,
they don't want to be remembered by their death. They want to be remembered for the life they lived. And I have to tell you, Brad, you highlighted that boy's life in such a beautiful way, and pay homage to him and his beautiful soul and light and all the wonderful things he's done.
well, the thing I'll say this, and we're probably closing, is I've been an ostomy patient, catheterizing for 25 years. I've been longer than I was a parent. I got to have Bradford for 23 years, but I sit here and think about how many parent people that don't have kids. I was told I'd never have one, and I had one. And I sometimes think, how lucky was I?
That's right. Exactly. Oh my God, I love that. And as I am so blessed that I had my son for almost 17 years, and I thank God every day for that. And I like to close every one of my shows with a poem that my son wrote, and this one is, I find, so fitting for just who you are. It's called Kindness, and it says, things I associate with the word kindness are also things that make people's lives enlightened. When I commit an act of kindness, I can't stop but feel excitement. The way someone's smile will widen and their face will glow like lightning. makes these acts of appreciation really worth trying. It's almost like looking over the horizon, and it creates a sensation of people being united. That's my 15-year-old son writing his heart out about one of the
That's
things that we've learned, kindness.
I couldn't even write that good at 50.
Oh, Fred, I got to tell you, it's been so lovely getting to know you. And I'm definitely coming to Arkansas one of these days with my friend Michelle, and we're going to go pay you a visit. Thank you for joining us today.
I'm honored that I was asked.
And on SOS Stories of Survivors, where survival sparks the soul, I want to thank our listeners for being here and also remind them that they can like us and donate. And if you have a story you'd like to share, DM me. I'd love to have you as a guest. Take care now.